and this is my action plan for improving physical fitness scores within my school. So, first, we had to identify what the actual problem of practice is. And for our individual situation, my PE department lacks opportunities for self reflective practices amongst my students regarding their personal fitness levels. So, what that means is we put a heavy focus on students' ability to reach certain fitness goals and basically for them to understand how important lifelong fitness is. However, despite all of these, we never really give students a chance to sit down and reflect on how their fitness journey is going throughout the year. So that's basically where we're seeing a disconnect moving forward with some of these issues that you're about to see. Currently at Century Junior High, which is a middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, we fitness test 3 times per school year. The state of Illinois only requires them to be tested 1 time. However, we like to test 3 times so students have the ability to see growth as the year goes on. Their fitness scores are recorded and then clearly shared with students. So students have the ability to see their scores after each time during the year getting tested. Students are tested in 4 different areas: muscular strength, muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance, and flexibility. There's a different series of tests that's used for each of these, which is the push-up test, the sit-up test, the pacer test, and the sit and reach test. Now, the issue with this is that teachers don't exchange student scores from year to year. So let's just, for example, say a 6th grader who maybe had me as a teacher their 6th grade year, when it becomes their 7th grade year, they may have one of the other physical education teachers. And if that's the case, because the teachers do not exchange student scores, all of their 6th grade progress would be lost. There's no way for them to access that. And that's an issue because the goal is not for students to just beat their scores as the physical school year goes on, but for them to see exactly how their progress is going so that they can use that as some motivation, some intrinsic motivation to continue on with their fitness journey. So, in order to diagnose the problem, we had to use some different data points. And because there's so many fitness tests so many times throughout the year, we decided to basically shorten our data span and focus on one singular test. So, the graph that you see before you is a 6th grade pacer test, so measuring cardiovascular endurance. And these were the comparisons from fall 2022 to spring 2023. So eventually, basically, this is the difference between test 1, right when they come into the school year, versus test 3, the final one throughout the year. And some of the problems that we're seeing is that scores are not consistent throughout the year. For instance, from fall 22 to spring 23, we noticed that in a class of 30, 16 students did improve. And that's great. That is what we want to see. We want to see improvement, showing that all their hard work and their process through their fitness journey is going to show results during the course of the school year. However, we still had 14 total students who either stayed the same or regressed, meaning their fitness scores in the spring were worse on the pacer test than they were at the start of the year. Now, this doesn't really make much sense unless there was some kind of an injury or an illness that maybe got in the way and caused that kind of number to pop up. But for 14 students to have this happen to, there was an issue here. As we move into 7th grade, we see the exact same thing. However, the numbers are a little bit better for this 7th grade class, but again, 7th grade pacer tests, fall 22 to spring 23, 20 students got better from what they tested in the fall to where they tested in the spring. That's great. However, 10 students still either stayed exactly the same or showed a regressed number. And then finally, with 8th graders, this is becoming concerning. We had 18 students show improvement on their pacer tests from the fall to the spring. So beginning of the year to end of year, which is fine. That's good. But we had 19 students who either stayed the same or their scores regressed. That is a really big problem. We essentially had more students not show improvement than students who did show improvement. So this is a problem because if it is a problem with our procedures and our lesson plans, that would need to be completely overhauled. However, with the amount of years of experience and the diversity of our PE fitness staff, it's highly doubtful that our actual curriculum is the problem here. So what would be the problem then? We believe we can basically limit this down to a few different causes. One of the main ones being a lack of motivation. If the students don't really see anything to work towards, then during the course of the year, they won't be as motivated to actually push themselves to work on increasing their physical fitness levels, whether that be muscular strength, muscular endurance, flexibility, or cardiovascular endurance. Additionally, right now, we are supplying them with little to almost no opportunity for self-reflection. This means every single day, every single class period, when we put in the work and we have them work really, really hard on their different fitness levels, there's nothing for them to basically fall back on and record their progress or talk about how they're feeling. So every single day they come back in and they start from step zero. We're starting right from the beginning again, so there's no way to check progress. And one of the things that's a problem with that is these students, even if they wanted to really work and chart their fitness, they don't get training in creating their own personal fitness plan. We push for them to understand and appreciate the importance of lifelong fitness, but we haven't been giving them the tools to start tracking their personal fitness journey yet. And then lastly, there's no accountability. So students know that their fitness scores do not reflect on their actual school or class grade. These scores are recorded by Illinois, the state of Illinois, and basically documented there. So these fitness goals are 100% for intrinsic value only. These scores only mean something to students if they appreciate their level of fitness. However, if there's students who are feeling self-conscious about their fitness levels, they're more inclined to not try as hard as they can because they don't want to be embarrassed by other people if they feel that they're not going to perform at the level that they're supposed to. So how do we fix this? How are we going to increase motivation by using self-reflection techniques and teaching them how to set up a personal fitness plan? So the three strategies that I was able to research that had a lot of positive notes behind them was, one, a daily or a weekly activity log. The second one would have been a weekly reflective podcast on how their progress was going. And then the third strategy I found was personal SMART goals. So let's start with the first one, an activity log. So an activity log is typically used at the end of a day or the end of a week for students to basically write down or type in all of the different physical activity that they were able to accomplish during that time span. Additionally, they can continue to get more specific with talking about how intense the workout was, how hard did they have to work, did they feel their effort was of high level, medium level, low level, how long did the activity go for, and then again, they can document and reinforce which health-related fitness component that their activity was focused on. So this is a way for students to kind of recap what they've been doing and what they've been using to work towards their personal fitness goals. These are great. However, in PE, we know that there's a lot of time that's taken up. So for instance, in a 45-minute class period, students need 5 minutes at the beginning of class and 5 minutes at the end of class to change out of their PE uniforms. So now we're down to 35 minutes. Additionally, it's going to take about 5 to 7 minutes to get into our squads, take attendance, and stretch out in the very beginning before we even talk about doing any activity. Then we're down to basically around 25 to 28 minutes. At that point, we need to give instructions for the day's activity. That could take another 5 to 10 minutes. Now we're down to 15 minutes of actual movement time. So you can see how implementing an activity log, we know that it's going to take more time. And as PE teachers, we want our students moving. So we're going to have to be smart if this is going to be one of the implementations that we decide to use. The second one is a reflective podcast. Now, again, this would take more time out of our PE class periods, but there are massive amounts of benefits here. Podcasts have the ability to allow students to openly and verbally reflect on all of their activities. So very similar to what an activity log is. However, students have the freedom to kind of show more emotion into their actual podcasts. And then if the teacher themselves are grading and checking these in, they can kind of read a little bit into how the student is giving off any kind of emotional vibes so that they can kind of see where students are at with their physical fitness journey. So these are great, but again, this is just straight reflective podcast, reflectiveness, self-reflections. So students can use this to kind of talk about how they're feeling, but there hasn't been anything completely taught yet to make sure that there's an improvement in their physical fitness plan. That's when the personalized SMART goals come in. So SMART goals are a way for students and anyone really to more specifically design a plan of action for what they're trying to accomplish. So SMART is actually an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So by using those 5 characteristics, students can actually develop their very own plan and goals in order to reach a fitness level that they are happy with. So for instance, for specific, what do I want to accomplish? Students can basically think about where do they want their goal to end? What is the ultimate goal? Now, for our senses, if we were to use this, we would ask students to develop a couple of different goals. One, for the end of the first trimester, students will be using their physical fitness scores and from the very first week of school, and then they would be creating these SMART goals after they've already tested once. We're going to have to push for students to do the best that they possibly can on their first set of tests. Once they see what they can do at this point in the year, now they can start to develop their SMART goal. What would you like to see improved on, and be specific with that? Secondly, we need to know that this goal is measurable. How are we going to know if you accomplished it or not? This is very simple because since we're going to test again in the winter months and then again in the spring, we will be able to compare these scores. We'll have measurable data that's very tangible for them to access. Third, is your goal achievable? Students need to know that if you're doing 8 push-ups in the very beginning of the year, being able to do 100 push-ups by the winter is not going to be very achievable. That's not necessarily going along with the next one. It's not realistic. So we want to make sure that these goals are achievable, that we have the resources to help them achieve this. And additionally, we want to make sure that the goal is realistic in itself, that it's going to be worthwhile and that it's going to be attainable. The last one is time bound. When can I accomplish this new goal? So obviously their training is going to be done in school and during PE. They can train more outside of school. This might actually help motivate them to continue their fitness journeys outside of school. But most of this should be kept in mind that it's going to be done within the process of trimester 1 for their PE class. So the chosen strategy that I chose to go with might be a little unorthodox, but it's actually a combination of all 3 of these. I really like each one of these for a different reason. And again, we've talked about the importance of preserving time in the class, but I think that the outcome of how great that this idea could be, and if we can get students to buy in, we're really going to improve our ultimate goal of getting students to appreciate lifetime fitness. They're going to be able to have more meaning in their personal fitness journey. So how this is going to be set up essentially. 1, students after their very first fitness test, they're going to have to develop their own SMART goals. Once they've developed their SMART goals and they've been approved by their teacher, then they move into the process of using self-reflection as often as possible. Teachers can decide to either have students use these self-reflection daily activity logs as an exit slip. Very simple. They do not need to be extremely detailed. This will be a way for students to write in exactly what activities took place during the course of that class period, what level of intensity they worked with, how do they feel about their level of intensity, were they happy, upset, were they disappointed, and additionally, any other notes that they want to incorporate very quickly. This is only going to take a couple of minutes. Very, very quick exit slip as students are getting ready to leave the classroom. Then I decided that bi-weekly, students can use the reflective podcasts to get on and basically verbally talk about how the last 2 weeks has gone and if they're noticing any progress or if they have any downfalls and pitfalls. Additionally, these different podcasts can actually have an accountability, a fitness accountability buddy or partner. So by having students get paired up with a classmate, they have someone that's there to cheer them on, pick them up when they get down and out, and celebrate all of their small victories. This creates a great little extrinsic motivator, whereas everything else that they're using with the daily fitness logs, their SMART goals, those are all going to be intrinsic led. That's all intrinsic motivation. Students need to use that in order to kind of build up all kinds of intensity and excitement for continuing on to their journey. So implementation indicators. So a few things that we want to point out. Everyone is going to have a job here. Teachers, students, even the actual physical space needs to be used to basically push students towards what we're hoping to achieve here. So number one, the teachers. Teachers need to be able to provide explanations for all of the SMART goals. We have to allow them to understand how to make them. And then additionally, when students start writing them, we need to give feedback for that. When students are ready to go with their final SMART goal, teachers need to approve it, make sure that it's going to be safe for them to work towards that goal. Additionally, the teachers are going to have to arrange the students into accountability partners. Personally, I would choose to randomize this. I don't think choosing an accountability partner would be necessarily the best because sometimes students will pick their friends, and friends sometimes can become a distraction. We want someone who's going to actually be a good accountability partner to let their partners know when they're needing to work harder, when they might be overworking, when they're doing something really well. Next, we want to make sure that teachers are conferencing with our students during the fitness portions of class. It's going to be extremely important that teachers are walking around, they're answering questions, they're giving students different advice, tips, any kind of positive remarks as well if a student is doing something correct. That way we know that we're helping students on their fitness journey where they're making good decisions. Lastly, for teachers, we need to basically constantly review the 4 components of fitness. Those are the 4 big keys of why we push fitness and basically using different exercises to kind of guide our body into a safe lifelong fitness journey. For students, we're going to ask that they be able to demonstrate how to properly set up those SMART goals, and we'll know that by checking them in. Students are going to need to complete those daily activity log exit slips. This will be very easy for teachers to check. Google Forms is a wonderful way to use for exit slips, and it'll basically give us real-time updates when students turn these in. Students need to be able to communicate with their accountability partners on daily progress. So we should make time as students are walking in to locker rooms, as they're walking through to clean stuff up. We need to give them a physical space and time in order to communicate with those partners. That's another form of reflection in order to basically kind of let them understand what they're doing well and what they need to continue to work on. Students are going to be expected to submit bi-weekly podcasts documenting their personal fitness journeys. And then if need be, students are going to be responsible for adjusting SMART goals. For example, at the end of trimester 1, if we retest them on their second fitness tests and they're not noticing the results that they want, if they feel like they're getting better, but they're still really far away from their goals, maybe we need to adjust their goals a little bit so that they're more attainable for that third final test. So students will be responsible for that. Our classroom environment. Teachers are going to be expected to basically set up our classroom or our gymnasiums or any other areas that we might use to display positive fitness-based vocabulary and definitions. We want students to understand the vocabulary that we're using in class, so that way it's not just words going right over their head. We need them to buy into this, and to do that, they need to become experts on all things fitness-based that pertain to their goal. Secondly, our space, we need to design and change bulletin boards every 2 weeks. We have bulletin boards in each one of our gymnasiums and in our fitness room, and they can be easily changed to highlight different exercises, activities every 2 weeks. That shouldn't be too difficult, and that keeps things fresh, keeps students looking at it as they come into new spaces. Additionally, we want to allow accountability partners to move near one another during fitness workouts. So if we are focusing on upper body strength or muscular strength for the upper body, we want our accountability partners to be working out next to one another. Because they're going to follow each other on their own fitness journeys, it's going to be best to sit them next to each other so that they can kind of give each other different pointers on form, motivation as they continue to go on, or any other little tips or advice as they see fit. The last thing that we want to focus on for an implementation indicator is the student work itself. Students need to be able to demonstrate the abilities to set, adjust, and execute exercises in order to achieve those personal SMART goals. So students are going to have to become really understanding and very good performers of these actual exercises to help them achieve these goals. Students are also going to have to demonstrate a cognitive understanding of all four of the four components of fitness: muscular strength, muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance, and flexibility. They're going to have to know what they are, how to use them, how to exercise them, and then why we are actually focusing on those four things. Why are they good for the body if you have good muscular strength, if you have adequate muscular endurance? Lastly, we want students to demonstrate their ability to reflect on their own and their accountability partners' progress throughout the trimester. It's going to be important that students learn how to critique themselves. This is going to be hard for some students because they may not be used to talking about things that they're proud of themselves with, or even things that they don't like about the way that their plan or their journey is going. So this is going to be a really good social emotional learning aspect that we're implementing into PE, which sometimes isn't always focused on. And these self-reflections are going to be a great way for students to basically hype themselves up and put themselves in a good mental spot. And as the educators or the teachers, as we go through and we look through their reflections, we can identify any students who might need a little bit of help. If anyone's too negative on themselves or not negative enough, not critiquing each other, if they're just being very complacent, we can step in and kind of make adjustments as well. So that brings us to the action plan. So essentially, this is a little bit more detailed on how the year is going to go in order to establish that this is going to work out. Obviously, if this is the first time it's going to be used, we can be a little bit more fluid with the actual timeline and make adjustments as need be. But this is the plan for trimester 1. Okay, is the very first go. So our learner-centered problems. Students students right now are showing stagnant or regressing fitness scores. That's our issue. Our problem of practice is that we have no emphasis on promoting individual fitness growth between the 3 fitness tests, which means we're using fitness games, we're using fitness activities to try and increase their fitness levels, but we're not really talking about how we should be using that as a personal plan. And again, there's no opportunities for students to reflect on their personal fitness journey. So that's what we're trying to fix. Our instructional strategy is that all physical education teachers are going to use these SMART goals for each student. Students are going to understand the importance of setting goals and how to use self-reflection to improve and provide intrinsic motivation. So the tasks, we'll go through this very quickly. Physical education teachers are going to start setting up the gyms with fitness-based vocab and the bulletin boards on the first Teacher Institute day. Before students are even in the building, all of the physical space should be ready to go by that time. Obviously, if you want to use some of the over the summertime, if you can get into the building early, that would be perfectly fine as well. But we want to make sure that the gyms and any of the workout spaces are completely decorated so that when students walk in the door on day 1, they understand that we mean business, that we will be fitness focused, and they can start to understand the path that this year is going to take. From August 29th, September 1st, all classes by this time will have finished their fitness tests. Now, the reason there's a gap between those 2 dates is because the first week is usually getting students their PE uniforms, they're assigning their lockers and their locks, talking about expectations, taking care of our equipment and things like that. So we're going to give them some time to do that. And after that time, we go straight into fitness tests during that next week, and then we have all of their incoming scores recorded. Between the dates of September 6th and September 9th, all physical education teachers are going to explain and review in great detail SMART goals and begin showing students how that they can actually set up and create their own. At this time, students are going to receive accountability partners. Students are going to now begin to complete and submit their actual first trimester SMART goals for teacher approval. Once those are approved, students will start to engage in their physical activity actual units and their physical fitness activities. They're going to start working towards these goals every day. Students need to complete their daily activity logs as exit slips, so that way they can get used to doing that. That's their first self-reflection. And then students are going to meet regularly with their accountability partners to discuss their progress, how they're feeling, are they enjoying it, are they not, and try to motivate each other a little bit. Students will then submit their biweekly podcasts explaining their self-reflections and how their fitness journey is going. That's all going to take place from September 12th all the way into October 6th. Now, during that time, between the dates of September 19th and 23rd, I want the PE teachers to meet to discuss the successes and the pitfalls of the first week so far. So this would be any of the exit slips, how that's going. This would be the time frame that we're giving them to meet with their accountability partner, all of those. And then that way teachers can kind of talk about the successes or the failures that we're experiencing and make any adjustments that might be necessary. Then we continue to move forward with October 11th to 13th. At this time, teachers are going to meet with their students. This is the midway point of trimester 1. So this is a time when teachers can actually stop, take some time to meet one-on-one with these students with their accountability partners and start discussing their progress towards their goal. Do they notice that they're getting any stronger, any faster, any healthier, any more flexible? Are they thinking that their goal is still achievable at this point halfway through the trimester? And we can discuss any kind of changes that we need to see fit. Teachers, obviously, if you're noticing that your students aren't working hard enough or overworking, this is a great time to have those little conversations. At this point, then, we move into October 17th to November 17th. We're getting closer to the end of the trimester here. Students are going to continue to engage in their physical education units, their activities. They're going to continue those exit slips and meeting with their accountability partners and also with their biweekly podcasts. On November 28th to December 2nd, all classes are going to have finished their second round of fitness tests. So at this point in time, we have now completed the very first round of our SMART goals. And it's going to be important to sit down. Students need to sit, compare their two scores, first from the beginning of the year in the fall. Now these would be the winter scores, and they're going to reflect on their SMART goal journey. How did things go? What are the outcomes? Are you happy with your progress? Do you think you worked hard enough? Did you overwork? Why are your scores the way they are? Once this is done, students are going to begin the process of creating their new SMART goals for trimester 2. So this is going to be their second round of SMART goals. They're going to be able to adjust. This should give them a little bit better of an insight to what they can actually accomplish during the next course of the trimester. So this is essentially a baseline action plan for how we're going to put this into play. And then in order to determine if this was a success or if this was a failure, we're going to have to kind of use a couple of different things. One, we can use a lot of these informal meetings with students. So talking with teacher to teacher about how things are going, talking with students about how they feel their journey is going halfway through trimesters. But then at the very end of the year, when we get the results, we'll be able to actually sit down and compare student fitness scores from fall to winter to spring. And if we can see an actual increase in students' improvement and less students falling into that no change or regression, then that's a huge indicator that this process is working, that it's beneficial. A second indicator evaluation that we need to use needs to be a student satisfaction survey. At the end of the day, fitness scores going up are great, but if we're turning students off to the idea of fitness and students were really unhappy with this process, then that's a really big problem, because the idea is that students are going to leave our school and continue moving towards a fitness goal. We want students to be done with school and continue fighting for their personal fitness goals and journeys. So if we're making fitness seem like a problem or a hassle, then we're really kind of doing an injustice to our entire the entire outcome and goal of what PE teachers try to get from their students. So these are the two evaluations that are going to be highly used: fitness scores themselves and to determine whether or not we're seeing improvement, and then student satisfaction surveys to determine if students are actually enjoying themselves and they appreciate the process that they're going through. So this has been my action plan for improving physical fitness scores for Century Junior High. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you very much.